this is your boy Bob TV. How you doing today? Look, I'm going to talk about another DNC mistake that seems to be repeating itself, and it needs to stop now, or we're going to look for 8 years of Trump versus 4 years of Trump. 8 years of Trump versus 4. If you don't stop this now, we already lost. First of all, DNC and DNC operative and Hillary Clinton supporter or Hillary Clinton, what you call surrogates, this is what you got to stop.
In an exit interview with Rolling Stone magazine, which included a photograph of the outgoing president seated on his Oval Office desk, looking pensive, if not exhausted, Rolling Stone founder Jan Wenner asked if Mr. Obama still regards the United States as a progressive country. That led the president to discuss the large numbers of white working-class voters who elected him twice, but who voted this time around for Mr. Trump. Part of it, the president said, has to do with our inability, our failure to reach those voters effectively. Part of it is Fox News in every bar and restaurant in big chunks of the country. But part of it is also Democrats not working at a grassroots level, being in there, showing up, making arguments. That part of the critique of the Democratic Party is accurate, unquote.
I believe that the Comey letter was a foul deed. It was a wrong thing to do. I have had great admiration for Director Comey. I think that he just couldn't take the heat. I think there should be an investigation, and we'll figure out how to call for that, of how Giuliani knew 2 days before that something was coming. It has been the practice of prosecutors and U.S. attorneys historically not to release that kind of information, even when they think it's significant, so close to an election. And Director Comey said, I don't know if this is significant. It really just changed everything. And I think the American people deserve an investigation into how a foreign government had an impact on our election.
What happened?
Well, look, I think the answer to that question is complicated. I think you heard some of it last week from Jennifer Palmieri and from Secretary Clinton herself and John Podesta. I think there were a number of factors, and I do think it's wise for us to take a step back and recognize that it's going to take a little time to fully understand what happened, but I'll offer a couple of thoughts. I mean, number one, I think one of the things we saw, there were a number of headwinds that just proved to be too strong. Electing the first woman president was always going to be tough. And I think given the level of sexism and misogyny that we saw come to the surface and be very public, I think that supports the fact that in this country we're going to have a real conversation about that. This was also the first election that we had without the protections of the Voting Rights Act. And I think there's a lot of good work going on now to try to understand what kind of implications that may have had. I also think that one of the things we have to take a look at is, what happened with the third-party votes, because in a number of cases, Hillary, lost some key states by very close margins in places where perhaps that third-party vote could have made up the difference. So I think there are any number of factors. I also happen to believe, having been on the road, the Comey letter did have an impact on our momentum. It was palpable, frankly, in some of the places that I visited. I was traveling, as you know, pretty consistently since the convention with Tim Kaine, and so had a real sense of what was happening on the ground. So again, I think there are a confluence of a whole host of things that there's not one simple answer to what happened here.
On the Comey letters, Karen, it has been in the reporting and kind of the conversations coming out of donor phone calls and with Hillary Clinton and other members of Team Clinton, it's been described, the Comey letters, as one hurdle too many for the campaign to overcome. Without the Comey letters, would you guys have won? Are you sure of that?
You can never be sure of anything in hindsight, but what I would say is it certainly felt that way. And again, having been on the road, we were seeing increasing sizes of crowds, increasingly people were more emotional on some of these rope lines, which is something that you tend to see, frankly, when you are getting towards the end and people, the momentum is there with you because people, they believe you might be the person who is holding in their hand the future of their family. And so the energy and enthusiasm, but also just the intensity that we were seeing. And then we did see, it did feel a bit different, and there did seem to be a bit of a difference. Like I say, I can only speak to what was happening on the ground and what I saw and felt and then saw in the numbers. So I think it certainly played a role and was an important factor. In addition, though, to the fact that here we were talking about things like the Clinton Foundation for months and months and months and months, when what do we know about the foundation? The Clintons don't get any money from it. They actually do real charitable work, versus the Trump Foundation, which, used its money to buy portraits of Donald Trump.
Karen?
I raise that to say, hold on, I do think that the media plays a role, and the coverage of this campaign is another piece that's going to have to be examined in its aftermath.
At the very beginning, you said you thought that sexism and misogyny may have played a role in Hillary Clinton's defeat, and I think there's no question that a lot of things were said in this campaign that many people deemed as sexist and misogynist. But what evidence do you have that voters made their decisions based on sexism or misogyny?
Well, look, I think I think a couple of things, right? Number one, I think one of the things we never really had a conversation about that, again, I think going forward we should talk about is how this country, how people feel about women in power. There is a reason that it is so hard for women, that we haven't had a female president before, and that it's harder for women candidates in executive positions. There are a lot of dynamics around that. So I guess I would say I would offer that as, some evidence, and I think there's a lot of good research on that. I certainly think that there was the narrative about Hillary and the sort of very ugly signs that I can't actually repeat the words that were said about Hillary, and the sort of sentiment and the chants, I think, contributed to a narrative about her as someone who is untrustworthy, even in places where that just wasn't true. There just wasn't evidence to bear that fact out. And I'll be really honest, and some of my colleagues won't like this, but I think, look, even in the primary, some of what we saw with the Bernie bros had a real chilling effect on a lot of women, and young women in particular. We learned about it during the primary. There were a number of these secret Facebook groups of young progressive women who were supporting Hillary, but frankly, they didn't want to deal with the backlash online from some of the Bernie bros. So again, I think, there's a lot of pieces to sort of tease out in this conversation.
A couple things. On the foundation bit, and there's nothing to argue on it, but we did cover very extensively. The Trump campaign didn't like how much that we talked about the Trump Foundation. That was extensively covered. I just want to point that out, and I know that you know that. But when it comes to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, did you guys underestimate Donald Trump, do you think?
I think that's hard to say. Again, I think one of the other pieces that we're going to have to learn about here is, did everybody underestimate what was going on in the electorate? Again, I think the fact that it was so close suggests that we didn't see a significant, massive realignment, but I think it shows that, we are a closely divided country. That's something we know, and that we are a country that is undergoing a tremendous moment of turmoil and change. And so I think...
But Karen, I think the question is, what we haven't heard in our conversation yet is, where do you see that the Clinton campaign got it wrong?
That's right. Stop blaming everybody but your own team. Stop blaming the Bernie or Bust people. Stop blaming WikiLeaks. Hey, it's not WikiLeaks' fault because your candidate was involved in disobeying the State Department, disobeying the NSA, and decided to put their own server in their house. It's not their fault. They didn't put the server in there. It's not their fault that she was communicating back and forth on that server. It's not their fault that Obama was communicating back and forth with her on that server and other people. It's not their fault that that server was hacked. Well, we don't have any evidence. What idiot's going to leave evidence? What kind of evidence you want? A picture, fingerprints, blood stains? Come on now. A smart thief don't leave evidence. That's the purpose of a smart thief, to be able to break in your house and take your stuff without leaving evidence. Who leaves evidence? Who wants to get caught? Come on, man. So it's not the Bernie or Bust fault. It's not WikiLeaks. It's not Comey. Oh, Comey damaged us. You were damaged from the jump start. That didn't help or hurt. People already made up their mind by then whether they're going to vote for you or not. I told you, get your base out. But no. You insult a lot of your bases, call them deplorable. Someone was on the fence for you and Trump. You call the Bernie Sanders supporters basement dwellers. Come on, I mean, you insult the base. I don't need you. I'll go get some Republicans. These are the things. You got to look in your own backyard. Number one, you shouldn't have been running her anyway. You shouldn't have been running her anyway. By looking at her record of her achievement was enough. It's not telling people that she was this and this and this. She was first lady. She started the Legal Defense Fund. She's State Department. She ran. She was 2 years. She was state senator. And no, what did she do? Was she successful? What did she do? Do she take PAC money? Do she take super PAC money? How much do she kiss up the lobbyists and all that? See, people don't want that. The reason Hillary Clinton lost this election is because people rejected establishment politics, because they know establishment politics never get stuff done for them. They always get stuff done for the donor class, the high donor class, the lobbyists. That's why she lost. It wasn't Bernie. It wasn't Comey. It wasn't none of that. It wasn't Julian Assange. Even though it helped, even though they exposed them, it was running her in the first place. She was a flawed candidate. I did videos way back in April about that. She is a flawed candidate. Don't run flawed candidate. David Dukakis, flawed. I can go on and on. One scandal come out and that was it. It was time for you to sit down. She had scandals coming out on the daily. You should have sat her butt down when the first scandal came out and tapped in Bernie, who had no scandals, no baggage, none of that stuff, who was stomping Trump in the polls. And the superdelegates I blame, that's a separate one. Superdelegates I blame because they knew she had all these flaws. Just because she was a Clinton, you just assume everybody loved the Clintons, they're going to vote for her. No, 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 no. She's a flawed candidate with a Clinton name, and that name itself was flawed. For whatever reason, because maybe she hooked you guys up in the Senate and things like that and went and campaigned for you and you owe her. You decide to run her. And now you're seeing a person who had the same ability to churn up the base, bring in new people to the voting booth, bringing in the independents into the Democratic Party. You saw this person and you assume, well, we still gonna go with Hillary Clinton, but this person gonna endorse her and all these people just gonna flock to her. Dumb DNC mistakes. Dumb. You ran the wrong candidate. She was flawed. All this pandering, all this two-faces, these lies going back and forth, the issue with the State Department and how she failed at that, the Clinton Foundation, Bill Clinton himself, and the list go on. Those are the reasons why she lost. You look at your mistakes now. Stop blaming other people. My mama say a leader always take responsibility for a situation or circumstance. It's my fault. It's our fault. It's things that we've done wrong. It's things that the DNC done wrong. David Wasserman Schultz trying to cheat for her. Donna Brazile handing out questions to her. Come on, all these things. Screwing Bernie Sanders, who was the real one to run. These are your mistakes. Nobody else's. Stop blaming other people for your mistakes. Listen to your own. Look into your own house before you start throwing stones outside your glass. However they say it. You got a glass house, baby, that's had a glass ceiling on top. And before you start, and just because you couldn't crack it, before you start, the reason you can take that stone and throw it at the glass ceiling and cause it to come down and you can reach and soar the greatest heights is because you're doing the same thing again. You're taking that glass and throwing it at somebody else outside the glass house. Guess who it's going to hit first? It's going to hit your glass. Look at your own reasons why you didn't win. It was your fault for running her in the first place. A failed, flawed, lying, habitual, pathological, lying, pandering, kissing up butt, trying to get all the money she can, politicians, at the expense of not really doing nothing for the people. While Donald Trump hollered the whole time, I'm going to bring back jobs. I'm going to help out the black community. I'm going to bring back jobs. Despite of him saying he's grabbing butts and all that kind of stuff, and despite all that, the people heard he's going to bring back jobs. I can bring back jobs. I know how to negotiate. You know, she didn't talk that language. And one of the things that really irks me is here we got a man who's supposed to be the racist in the game, got a black initiative to help black people in the inner cities and other cities abroad, who's talked about investing in the black communities, investing in historical black colleges, helping bring extra incentives to companies that decide to come back to America and move into the inner cities, like Detroit and all that. You want to know why Trump got 15% of the black vote and Hillary didn't get it? Because he talked the language that she did not talk. Obama proved it by not doing it, and she wasn't going to say she's going to do it. Trump said he did it, and he got the black votes, he got some Hispanic votes. Now, I went to a Trump meeting, I went to all the meetings, and I went and I was surprised. There was no fussing, there was no racism, none of that stuff. People was there because they believed Donald Trump would bring change to the entire system. Those are the type of candidates you need to run. People who pose to bring change to an entire system. Bernie was that person, and you refused to let him go against Donald Trump. And that's why you lost on Bob TV. Holla at you later. Peace.